The news we received today, in particular, was a huge lift. And again, I respect these guys are the ones on the field playing. I'm standing on the sideline, Dana. So it's different for me. There's an added dimension for them on the field. So I'll just yield to Josh, and you can explain.
Yeah. Again, Mario talking to us as a team. And the things that he kind of told us and really didn't tell us, he demanded us. And you can't not honor his request to go out there and charge forward, to the best of our abilities. And obviously we'll be playing with, I guess, less heavy hearts now, knowing that, today's news was a lot of tears of joy, I'll tell you that. But to know that that's what he wants. That's what his dad wants. I think guys are excited to get out there. We've talked about it. Obviously, like we want to go out there and play for 3, and it'll be a huge driving force and the emotion and the love of the game that we play with and for each other. Hopefully, we can get them back soon.
Peter, the situation has been brought up multiple times over the past week, the Hank Gathers death on the court during his conference tournament with Loyola Marymount back in 1989, 1990, that time frame, and how that spurred Loyola Marymount to go forward and make it all the way to the Final 8 of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, losing to eventual champion UNLV. I believe it was 89. That team overachieved its talent to get that far. And I say that because the Bills don't need to overachieve. They're already fully talented
right.
to qualify for the Super Bowl and win it. So when you already take an elite unit of athletes and coaches who are already in position to compete for the highest prize in football, and you add this to it, I don't want to be anybody that plays the Bills the rest of the way.
Yeah, totally agree. We're going to get to this later in the show, but all the conversation about home field and, neutral site and playoff seeds and all that, I've become more and more convinced in recent years, particularly, that home field's really not that important. I just don't think it is in the NFL. I don't even know what the stats say. I just think that almost always the better team wins. Almost always, not always. But I was thinking about that, and I'm going to say, what about the DeMar factor? What about the Buffalo Bills saying, not today, not on our watch, we ain't losing. And look, that stuff, you play Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, it doesn't always work for the best that way. But to me, this is not a detriment. The heavy weight that they're going to all feel and the tears that I'm sure that some of these players will shed on Sunday before they play the New England Patriots. The emotion it will take to go out and play this game. But I just believe that that entire Buffalo Bills team will sleep incredibly soundly on Sunday night because they will know that they will have given every ounce they had to try to win that game on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, and every game after that. And you make a great point about home field advantage that I hope I remember in the next segment when we really dig into what's happening there. Before we finish this segment, there's been some discussion this week, and look, I have chosen to be critical of no one who has said or written or tweeted anything. This is a collective trauma that we're all dealing with in our own way. The vast majority of people are not malevolent. The vast majority. The vast majority of people in this business are not malevolent. People just do the best they can under the circumstances they're given. There have been some unfortunate things that have been said. There have been some bizarre takes I've heard. There have been people who have gotten their noses bent out of shape over very trivial things unrelated to Damar Hamlin this week. It's like, is there no awareness of the situation or the perspective that we're currently in? That said, there has been a take bubbling around out there that T. Higgins is in some way to blame because he dropped his helmet into the chest of Damar Hamlin. I've been very confused by that. Everything about that play looked like a routine football play that we see all the time. Here is Josh McDermott, or not, I'm sorry. I'm between talking about Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. I have merged them into one person. Here is Josh Allen at the conclusion of his press conference yesterday, defending T. Higgins against this scattered idea that's out there that this was in some way his fault.
I do want to say one more thing, and I haven't reached out to T. I hope that he got some relief today, and I don't know. I saw some stuff on Twitter, and people should not be attacking him whatsoever. And I'm glad that Damar's family came out and said that, and hopefully he found some relief today, because again, that's a football play, and I hope that he doesn't hold that upon himself, because again, there's nothing else that he could have done in that situation. So I just wanted to say that too.
Well said by Josh Allen, and I think it's something T. Higgins needed to hear, Peter, because how can you not feel responsible? You're naturally going to feel responsible even if you're not, and you need someone to say to you, it's not your fault. T, it's not your fault. He doesn't need to turn on TV and have someone say, I think it's his fault. So, again, people are just doing the best they can with the tools they have to navigate a very difficult week. I'm not suggesting anyone was malevolent, but I just think it's harmful at a time when the guy is surely thinking it's his fault to have anyone suggest that maybe it is. It clearly wasn't, isn't, and there's nothing he should feel guilty about.
Mike, can I give you an overriding point about the last 5 days? And I don't say this, I say this maybe out of a little bit of experience, both with social media and just kind of in life. But, the one thing that occurred to me this week watching every take, every comment, everything, is that we live in a society where everybody these days on Twitter, on television, everywhere feels like I have to have an opinion. I must be heard. And, Mike, sometimes silence is golden. And I believe after this week that if there are people who just need to look at their Twitter feed and to look and see the 78 times that they've tweeted this week, they just need to look at it and say, maybe I'd be better off just not maybe sitting this out. If there's some information, that's great. We all know that everybody is sad about Damar Hamlin. And I don't mean that one or two tweets, but what really hit me this week, and Paul Kuharski wrote about it, I thought eloquently in Tennessee this week. He said, sometimes it's good just to sit this one out, and just to let the world go by, and just to let life happen for a little while. You don't need to fill the space of just talking or just commenting for no specific reason. And look, and that has something to do with T. Higgins, but it has something to do with the way our society is and the way the modern media is. For some reason, we've got to the point, especially in the age of Twitter, where we feel that it's important that we are heard at all times. And it really isn't that important.
Peter, that's a great point, and it's an example of how social media has rewired our brains. We hear it so much as it relates to the development of young boys and girls, but it's rewired the brains of adults as well, and it's part of our reality, and we do feel compelled, especially if you're in this business, to have something to say about everything. Now, I never made the conscious decision to be quieter than usual. I didn't know what to say. I was dumbfounded. I was scared, I was concerned, and I didn't think I could articulate anything. And I remember very vividly Tuesday morning as we struggled through 1 hour of a show. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what could be said. We didn't know anything. Right. We were just waiting and watching and worrying, and people wanted to hear from the folks in the media who are supposed to have something to say. But you're right. There are times where you don't have anything to say, and if you don't have anything to say, don't force it. And you don't have to have a comment on every single thing, especially when it's a grave situation like this. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we return, we're going to delve into what the NFL is in the process of deciding to do. And there are some very fascinating nooks and crannies about how this piece of sausage is being made or not made.
No question about it.
Talk about that. Before we go, though, here's the house Peter was talking about in Buffalo. And it's just an example of the time that people will spend and devote to a team that brings a community together and holds it together. And I would say that the Buffalo community and the rest of Western New York as together as it has ever been this morning. We'll be back with more PFT Live right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.